Start the show for the YouTube audience.
Your host, Mike Rivero.
There we are.
He is a really bad idea. Here is your host, Michael Rivero.
And aloha, America. Welcome to our show here. A little nerve-wracking there getting started this late here, but it's Friday, December 20th, 2019. Thank goodness it's Friday. Thank goodness it's Friday. Thank goodness it's Friday. And I really need the weekend off here. And, of course, next week is Christmas. So we've got a lot to talk about today. The phone lines are open, 800-313-9443. Mike is in our control room, ready to answer the phone, put you on the air with your comments, questions, and opinions here. Well, last night they had what is probably going to be the final Democratic debate before the start of primary season. And some of it really got out into the twilight zone. With one of the candidates attacking Donald Trump, saying he would step on a kitten to get what he wants, which is an attempt to portray Trump as this absolute heartless fiend who would step on a kitten, but no basis in fact whatsoever. But overall, most people watching the debate last night are saying that Biden basically won that one. He came out on top. He hit the right notes, and that he is pretty much the front runner at this point. Of course, the polls have been showing that for quite some time here. And Biden gave a showing that may serve to cement his position as the front runner. And it was a bit of a surprise because in the past, Biden's debates appearances have been viewed as tepid. But he sort of really woke himself up last night and showed a tremendous amount of improvement. Now, Biden, of course, dismissed accusations that his son, Hunter Biden, had acted improperly in Ukraine. He focused on how Trump has tarnished the reputation of the United States around the world. I don't think that's Trump who did that. And he put forward the promise that under a Biden presidency, that would change. Well, I don't know, because I don't think the rest of the world's opinion of the United States and its image is really based on solely on the president. There are presidents who have been inspirational and who've been good for the image of the United States. But the United States image is really based more on the unending series of regime change wars, its bullying tactics in international economics. And I don't think there's a president who could really change that until the behavior of the country as a whole, the behavior of the government as a whole changes. So everybody's still talking about the impeachment, and they're talking about this very bizarre situation where Nancy Pelosi is refusing to send the articles of impeachment over to the Senate for a trial. And basically what they're trying to do is have the House of Representatives, which failed in their show trial in the House, they want to try and engineer a replay, if you will, over in the Senate. And Mitch McConnell is saying, no, we're just judge and jury. Okay, we're going to judge the case on the facts or the absence of facts that you presented in the House impeachment hearings. And it's rather interesting when you have seen the Democrats over the last several months say, we've got to impeach Trump now. He's a danger to the country. He's a danger to the world. We got to get him out of the Oval Office now. And now they're stalling. And they're out there demanding a fair trial in the Senate after refusing Trump a fair trial in the House. And obviously what the Democrats mean by a fair trial is, again, an abusive show trial with the deck stacked against the president here. Now, at this particular point, Nancy Pelosi has definitely overstepped her authority in withholding the articles of impeachment and making demands of the Senate. And so there's abuse of power right there. And it's abuse of Congress. Obstruction of Congress. So, once again, they're projecting. The Democrats themselves are committing the crimes they claim that Donald Trump committed. And it's just hanging, it's hanging up the whole system. Now, obviously, to me, what's really going on is the Democrats know the articles of impeachment are going to fail in a Senate trial. They're trying to figure out some way they can hijack the Senate. But if they can't, it's going to be a huge embarrassment after all these years of screaming about Trump and the House hearings, which were just an absolute shambles with no real witnesses, just a lot of rumor, innuendo, and implication, if you will. They don't want to go through that embarrassment. So now they're stalling for time here and trying to figure out if there's some way they can rig the Senate trial in their favor. So Harvard law professor Noah Feldman testified in the House impeachment inquiry several weeks ago, basically saying until the House sends those articles of impeachment to the Senate, Donald Trump has not actually been impeached because the process has been interrupted. Now, the Constitution doesn't say how fast the articles must go to the Senate, and some delay would not necessarily be inconsistent. But this idea of withholding the articles of impeachment until the Senate capitulates and agrees to hold the trial the way the House Democrats want it held, that really is, and I'm in agreement with Noah Feldman, Trump has not actually been impeached yet. Okay, we're going to take a moment to shout an acknowledgement to our on-air affiliates who are just now rejoining our network. So according to this Harvard law professor, Trump isn't technically, he hasn't been impeached. The House passed the articles, but if the articles don't get delivered to the Senate, the whole process is illegitimate. In fact, you could have Mitch McConnell basically stand up at this point and say it's all null and void. They broke the rules several times, as a matter of fact. Now, Ruth Bader Ginsburg has inserted herself into this fray by suggesting senators can be disqualified from the upcoming impeachment trial if they are not impartial. Now, that's rather hard to prove one way or the other, but they've already got one aspect, and that is the fact that the Republicans in the House of Representatives, not one of them voted for the articles of impeachment. So they can go in and say, well, obviously the Republicans are biased in favor of Donald Trump, therefore the Republican senators should be disqualified from the Senate trial. That would immediately, of course, result in an all-Democrat, Trump-hating Senate that would move forward on those articles of impeachment. But Ginsburg is now a player in the dispute, not just a potential adjudicator. And again, she has overstepped her authority as a member of the Supreme Court. That's not her call to make here. Anyway, Trump is still getting ready for a Senate trial, and he stated that White House lawyer Pat Cipollone is likely to be the main lawyer to represent him at the U.S. Senate's impeachment trial. And Trump's lawyers are probably going to argue there is no evidence the president did anything wrong. The House impeachment inquiry didn't actually produce any witnesses who saw the president do anything wrong. There's no documentation. It was all, we think he did this. We think he might have done that. And the whole thing was partisan and flawed, and I'm sure probably most of the senators understand that. Meanwhile, of course, not a single official involved in Spygate or Russiagate has yet to be indicted, much less convicted and sent to prison. That's the power of the deep state. Look at all the nefarious stuff that they have been doing, and again, openly violating the law and the Constitution. And all the time they're screaming and pointing fingers at Donald Trump. And I would hope that the American people have been paying very, very close attention. Certainly the fact that Trump's approval ratings have gone up so much during this whole impeachment situation, I think indicates that the American people do realize what a sham it was. Okay, we're now getting word that John Durham, who is working underneath Attorney General Barr, is now investigating former CIA Director John Brennan's role in 2016 election interference and his lying to Congress. And Durham has called for Brennan's emails, call logs, and other documents. Specifically, he's talking about Brennan's lies to the Congress on the use of that Steele dossier to get the FISA court, to trick the FISA court into authorizing spying on Trump's campaign. Over in New Jersey, Democratic Governor Phil Murphy has signed legislation that restores voting rights for convicted criminals who are out on parole or probation. This measure will apply to roughly 80,000 convicts starting in March of next year. So they're going to be available for next year's election. Now, I don't know what the demographics are for these parolees and whether they're going to vote Republican or Democrat. Obviously, they're going to be beholden to this Democratic governor for restoring their voting rights. But the governor says this is his second chance agenda. And everybody's, everybody's already jockeying for next year's election. They're playing with the demographics. Certainly the Democrats are with the illegal immigrants here. All right, moving on over to the international news. Libya's GNA government, that's the one that's recognized by the United Nations as the legitimate government. They're saying it will boost cooperation with Ankara, and they're accepting the Turkish offer of military support. So we may be seeing yet another war in Libya. People haven't suffered enough here. Meanwhile, Gorbachev is out there sounding a warning that America has an obsession with weapons. And the U.S. is bent on absolute military supremacy, which they're not going to get with the poor quality weapons, very expensive poor quality weapons currently being produced by the military industrial complex. But Gorbachev is warning that the collapse of Cold War era nuclear weapons limits threatens a global catastrophe. And we have seen not just Trump, but other members of other past presidents walk away from treaties that were designed to basically keep the world safe from a potential nuclear exchange. All right, we've got callers waiting on the line. We're going to start with Joe in Tennessee. Aloha, Joe. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, Mike. I've been saying for weeks now that the smart move for the Democrats was not to go all the way with this, because in the Senate there'll be a trial, and this might be their way of getting out of it, to be able to say they impeached them, but for not really impeach them, because technically it wouldn't be an impeachment, but it'll appease their rabid base, but not allow the Senate to start calling Hunter Biden and all Trump's witnesses, which they never did in the House. It was a sham hearing in the House. Yes. It was a Stalinist show trial. But one thing that people aren't contemplating in this, or I haven't heard anybody commenting on it, is the Democratic senators from red states. You know they don't want to have to vote on this. I mean, yes. You know, a lot of the Kavanaugh thing really did a number on a lot of red state senators in the election in 2018, even though, you know, everybody was talking about the House and how the House changed hands. The Republicans actually picked up quite a few Senate seats, and they were all red state senators that voted against Kavanaugh. And I think that you'll have a similar thing happen, because senators are usually not quite as radical as the House members. And a lot of people from the red states that Trump won, and even some of the blue states, like the working class blue states like Michigan, Ohio, Pennsylvania, any of this, I haven't looked at the senators yet to kind of, in my mind, see who's going to have a real hard time with this. But I'll guarantee you that the senators, the Democratic senators, are screaming bloody murder. Like, what have you done to us? Laying this this egg on us and bringing us, you know, it's like a fart in church. Thanks a lot, you know. So, you know, this is very interesting, and it's kind of it's really showing up Pelosi as really being the one that's kind of like overturning the norms of this. You know, the fact that they have an impeachment and she's not going to give it to the Senate until she gets what she wants. I mean, it's actually a typical woman move, you know. So in a way, that's what I see here, is it's the feminine Democrats versus the masculine Republicans in their behavior types, which are stereotypical, but then nonetheless there's truth to it. Yes. One of the I wanted to bring up today also, Trump's attack on the evangelical magazine. And I've been very often calling this show about how I love how Trump has been attacking institutions, corrupt institutions mostly. And I hope this is the beginning of an attack against the hypocritical churches in this country. You know, they really live off the, they got tax-free status. They're all fat and happy, driving big trucks and big cars and living large, these evangelicals and Catholics and whoever, all the churches, you know, there's Jewish, whatever, rabbis. And they really got a free ride. And when you look at the culture and the wars that we get involved in and the abortion and all these other, like, sinful acts, you know, I blame the churches more than I blame the politicians. I really do. I have for years, because where were they? You know, where were the churches when all these abominations are being voted on? They really keep their mouths quiet because, of course, they don't want their tax-free status challenged. You know, the few good churches that I see have had, armored trucks, come and destroy them, like in Waco, or the guy in Indianapolis who was against the Gulf War, who had his church taken from him. So I think that this is another area where once again, I applaud the president for, even though there's political and bad feelings involved in this, I hope it starts a trend. I hope that the churches are started to be pointed out of their hypocrisy and how they failed this country and they failed this people, because their job really is, like, to uphold the moral, righteousness of our nation and our people, and they've totally failed. I mean, I look at all the...
Hello? Hello, Joe? I think we lost Joe. Well, I know the churches and the religious institutions like to posture that they are basically representative of a supreme moral authority, but we know there's a lot of corruption in the churches. We know there's a pedophile problem in the church, and we know that most churches make a huge amount of money. Not all of them. There are churches that go out of business. Anyway, I don't know why we lost Joe. Maybe he'll call back in. Can we switch over to Kevin in West Virginia? I'm not hearing any phone calls. Did something go wrong with our system?
I reckon so, Michael. I'm not sure exactly what's going on, but I think we lost RBN, so we'll just kind of stand by. We still got YouTube, so just...
All right, well, then I'm going to keep going for the YouTube feed, but it looks like maybe we lost our link to RBN. And let's see. No, RBN is still showing up on... Hello? Is somebody on the line?
Am I still on the line?
I lost. I don't know what happened.
You're on the line, and so what were we talking about? Let's pick up where you left off.
Well, I was talking about that Stargazer Boeing rocket that went off course.
Yes.
And it's interesting to me because you have this Stargazer thing, and then you have the 737, and Boeing's a complete in shambles, really, when you think about such a great company. But a lot of people don't know, and I was reading about this 2 days ago, is that one of the Boeing, there was a Boeing executive that got arrested for attacking some Trump women at a Trump event at the Willard Hotel. He was a 37-year-old Boeing corporate executive who used to be a Democratic National Committee Philadelphia representative, who I'm sure Boeing hired as a lobbyist, who had been arrested for attacking Trump supporters, calling women Nazis and using the C words at them. And then he attacked one of the guys that was there. And I just thought that it's kind of interesting, the karma here, that, Boeing hasn't fired this guy yet, and here's a guy that, is supposed to be government operations executive for Boeing in Washington. And these people are just at the Willard Hotel having a, America First gathering. And this loudmouth lunatic. And I just think, like, well, when they hire people like that, it serves them right. No wonder the company's falling apart, Yeah, no wonder they don't have...
On that. I would agree with you on that. All right, well, listen, Joe, I'm going to put you on hold.
Thank you.
I'm going to take a break for commercials. We'll be right back. Hi, America. Welcome back to the show here, and we're talking with Joe in Tennessee. And Joe, just kind of pick up where you left off.
Well, I'm an engineer, and you're a tech kind of guy, and I'm sure, like, in your experience, it's been in my experience, you get these business people, they show up, and they just, you don't know, they're just like office pukes or bean counters, and that's bad enough. But Boeing, instead, this guy here, He's like one of those mafia no-show job kind of guys. I mean, he comes from the DNC in Philadelphia. What does that tell you? I mean, he's a muscle guy, right?
Yeah.
And he's working in Washington as a lobbyist. So Boeing here is, to me, it just shows the corruption of Boeing. A once great American company. They used to be, they would probably hire an ex-engineer for a job like this, or somebody with background in aerospace, or maybe even the military. But no, they hire. That
would actually make sense here. But I was with NASA when they were going through that transition from the old NASA to the new NASA, when all the scientists and engineers who'd gotten us to the moon and everything, they were all demoted or let go, and they brought in a bunch of these MBAs to try and make spaceflight, more business-like and more like an airline, which doesn't really work. But yeah, this is a major blow to Boeing. They've had more problems with the 777, the 777X. Now they're halting production of the 737 MAX until sometime early next year, and then for the Starliner to just have this kind of a goof where it shut off its engines early because it thought it was already in orbit. That's three strikes if you're out. And if I were a major stockholder in Boeing, I'd seriously be going on in there and say it's time for a management overhaul.
Yeah, no, I mean, what bothers me most about this, Mike, is I understand business. You need business guys. I mean, I understand that a little bit, but when you get political guys, I mean, whoa! It's bad enough the accountants come in there when you're an engineer, and it's bad enough when the business guys come in there. That's bad enough. But then if you start getting political guys coming into your company, oh my God! And that explains it. That explains the 737, because they figured out they hiring up political guys, and it gives them cover with the FAA, and they can cut corners and put people's lives at risk. So it all comes out when you see like a thug like this. It kind of brings that to the forefront, in my view. It's like a karma thing. Like, oh, no wonder they're having all these things blowing up in their faces, because they not only it's worse than having business guys running it. It's political. What are they going to have, like religious guys next? Priests.
Well, it's like the old Soviet Union, where all the factories were under the control of, party officials. And, it led to some disasters like Lysenkoism. You'd think we would learn from earlier mistakes that what you want to have in management, top management, are people who've grown up with the company and know how all this stuff works. But if the company management gets infiltrated by people who don't know what they're doing, you're going to have some disasters. I saw that in Hollywood. There was this clique of gentlemen, if you will, where one would get hired at a studio and he would work to get other people fired and bring in the rest of his little club, and they would almost wreck the place. So they almost destroyed Paramount. That way. And then they got their claws into Disney, and Disney had some very, very rough years. But if I were a Boeing stockholder, I'd say it's time for pink slips.
Oh, no, and I'm hoping one day to call you and say, oh, I read that this guy got fired. But we'll see. We'll see what happens in court and everything. I'm going to keep an eye on this and find out what happens. I mean, it's just, to me, it's kind of like these things that they seem not related, but they are. It's like, yeah, this guy was at a thing at the Willard Hotel and he attacked somebody, and oh, look at that, he's a Boeing executive, and then all of a sudden Boeing, they got all this problem here, and it just kind of shows like the culture of the company, a once great American company. I mean, and this just is kind of evidence of where we're going wrong as a country, and these companies.
They let go all of the experienced engineers who'd grown up with the company instead of hiring in all these H-1B students from other countries who are well educated, let's be honest about that, but they don't have the experience. They haven't spent their lives building airplanes or satellites or rockets. And as a result, you have snafus like today. This was obviously a simple computer programming mistake that somehow got through whatever they have for quality assurance over there. It does happen. There was an Ariane 5 that crashed because they'd accidentally loaded the software for the Ariane 3 into its computers, and nobody caught that one. So I'm sure by the time they have their next test flight, this problem will have been identified. The big question is, what other problems are there? And I imagine the astronauts who are scheduled to ride the Starliner up to the ISS, they got to be feeling pretty nervous right about now. And we'll see if it lands safely on Sunday. And, hopefully that will kind of be the end of it. But you're right. Boeing was one of the iconic, great American companies, and all of a sudden they've just had this unending string of disasters, from cutting corners, from trying to squeeze more profit out of their product, and the issues of usability and safety have been de-emphasized. Anyway, Joe, gotta let you go.
Thank you, Mike.
And we got another caller waiting on the line. We'll be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here. We're going to go back to the phones to Kevin in West Virginia. Aloha, Kevin. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hi, Mr. Mike. I hope you're having a great and wonderful day, you and Claire.
Yes.
Joe was talking about this being a good thing, that the articles of impeachment, they're not going to move it to the Senate. Well, I'm looking at it as they're buying time for the people, the boys at Fort Meade, to keep getting more and more information on these senators that could possibly flip whenever they do go to vote. I think that's what's really going on.
That could be a factor in there. I mean, obviously, the government is spying on everybody, including itself. But I really think it's a more case of Pelosi knows the Senate is going to vote to throw out the charges, and she doesn't want the Democrats to have to go into next year's election campaign with that embarrassment, because the polls are already showing that this whole impeachment sham has not gone over well with the average voter.
And I agree with that, but I have to say this too. These Democrats, they don't care. They are power hungry and trying to seize power. I mean, they've already said they want a one-party system here.
Yes.
They're running roughshod all over you and I and the Constitution. They don't care, which leads me to the next question. If they succeed in pulling this off, what next?
Well, we'll become the new Soviet Union, socialistic and, the government in control of everything. That's certainly part of the UN's Agenda 30, is to basically have everything owned by government and run by government. And it really is modeled on the old Soviet Union.
Yeah, and I agree. I mean, and I raised that question because people like you, people like me, you're more of a target because you're on air, but they're going to come for us whenever, yes. If they pull this off, and I think they're going to succeed. I hope I'm wrong, but I think they're going to succeed in this, and they're going to come for us, and that's, that in itself, it should wake some people up, which leads me to, is Trump in on this?
I seriously doubt Trump is in on it. He's kind of the sacrificial lamb. And I think the Democrats are worried about the opinion of the voters going into next year, because they could face the same situation that Hillary faced back in 2016. Despite all the cheating and the rigging of the primaries and everything, if enough voters just don't like them, they are going to lose their job. They're going to lose power. And I think that's really what has motivated Nancy Pelosi to just grab these articles of impeachment and say, we're not sending them over to the Senate. They don't want a Senate trial and the embarrassment of having the charges thrown out before the election, because it's just going to hammer home to the voter that this really was just a complete sham. And, this effort to oust a duly elected president. And so whatever grandiose plans they may have for a one-party state could very seriously be derailed by all of this. They may have overreached on this.
I agree. The next little question that I have is a kind of a sciencey question. Do you ever look or watch the SOHO satellites?
No.
No. Well, you may find this interesting, and I don't know what this means, but the sun has done a polar reversal. Its poles have flipped. And prematurely, I'm not sure what that means for us. Like, I don't know. But I find that interesting and fascinating that something is up with the sun and nobody's really saying anything about it. I know the sun's poles have flipped, previously in the past.
Yeah,
But
it happens on a pretty much regular basis.
Yeah. I mean, I just don't know what it means for us here on the, on planet Earth. But I find that interesting, and I also find it, we need to be paying more attention to that big giant ball in the sky that we call the sun.
Well, we definitely do, and as a matter of fact, the sun has just set a new record for longest period without sunspots, which, again, this relates to ClimateGate and the fact that we're actually entering a new Maunder minimum rather than broiling to death the way Theta Grunberg insists is happening. But the sun reverses its magnetic field every 22 years.
Okay, this one's premature though. This one did on 11, and I don't know if like you said, everything's in cycles, but this one's a little premature. I don't really know what that means. But like you said, I know the sun flips, it flips its poles every 22 years, but this time it happened in the 11th year. I mean, and like you said, the sun, I think its longest record is like 230 some days without having a sunspot or something. Which, I mean, it's going to cool the Earth down, absolutely. And then I have to also ask, since you brought up ClimateGate, carbon dioxide. Mars is covered by carbon dioxide. Why is it so cold?
Good point. Good point. Partly, being that far away from the sun is part of it. Not having a thick enough atmosphere to act as an insulator is another part of it. I mean, the evidence that has been collected about Mars from all the landers and rovers is that Mars, at one point in its distant past, was much more like the Earth, with liquid water running on the surface and a much thicker atmosphere. And everybody's trying to figure out what happened. The leading theory right now is there was a monstrous asteroidal impact that literally splashed the atmosphere out into space, and without the atmosphere, the water started to sublimate, boil off into space. But there is still liquid water on Mars. They've established that now.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I just find it interesting that all these people scream carbon dioxide when that planet is completely covered in carbon dioxide. Granted, it's, further away from the sun than what we are. But if that gas heats stuff up, then it should be heating that planet up. In theory, it should be heating that planet up, trapping whatever solar heat or solar radiation from infrared. Yep.
NASA's already come out and admitted that carbon dioxide in the atmosphere does not behave like a pane of glass in a greenhouse, and that in point of fact, it's an atmospheric coolant, because it will capture the energy from the sun and radiate it back out into space on a different frequency. It's kind of like an invisible fluorescence effect. The only reason they picked carbon dioxide to demonize is that could be linked to human activity. I mean, the worst greenhouse gas in the atmosphere is water vapor, clouds, but you're not going to get people to pay a cloud tax. Methane is far more potent a greenhouse gas than even the hysterics were claiming carbon dioxide was. But most methane comes from deep crust microbes and termites and things like that are far too smart to listen to Al Gore's nonsense.
And this little discourse that you and I just had, somebody needs to send this to Greta Thunderthighs or Thunderbird, whatever her name is. Her, because she needs a I think a little lesson on what carbon dioxide actually is. I mean, she should go back to school. Obviously, stop being in the United States.
Greta's a front person. I mean, they're now doing a biopic of her, and from the footage that's already come out in the trailers, it's obvious they've had cameras running on her since the first day she appeared on social media at the start of her so-called viral rise. She's manufactured from day one, and they pick this cute little girl because people tend to listen to children more than they listen to adults, and then they pick someone who's suffering somewhere along the autism spectrum, so we'll all feel sorry for her and won't dare to speak up and challenge her and say, I think you're wrong about this.
Thank God I'm blind, because I don't think I'd want to look at her.
Well,
just saying.
Okay.
Just saying. just throwing that out there. But you have a great day, Mr. Mike, and give Miss Claire the best, and Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas to you too as well. Thank you for the phone call, Kevin. We're going to let you go. The phone lines are open, 800-313-9443. Getting on back to the international news, Congress has adopted that final defense bill, Mutual Defense Pact. Well, actually, the final defense bill, our defense bill, but it's loaded with pro-Israel provisions. And it's basically, as usual, it's a lot of money. It's $500 million for U.S.-Israel missile defense cooperation, $25 million for U.S.-Israel counter unmanned aerial systems. And basically, you, the American taxpayer, are funding the Iron Dome, David Sling, Arrow 2, and Arrow 3 missile defense systems. Now, we're all being told that this is going to help America's own missile defense capabilities, but so far, we haven't really seen Iron Dome show up on any American bases. And probably because its performance hasn't been all that good against those homemade rockets that Hamas is using here. Now, there's an article here that is very, very key, and it's from Russia Today. Are Israel and Iran preparing for war? Well, Israel has been drooling for war with Iran for something like 30 years. And the U.S. talks about dealing with Iran a lot, that Iran's got to do this, Iran's got to do that. And they walked out of the P5+1 deal. They have hit Iran with these crippling sanctions, but they do seem a little reluctant to actually try and physically invade Iran, because it would be much more difficult than Iraq was. And U.S. military forces are already overstretched. The stockpiles are worn down. More importantly, though, Russia has already indicated that if Iran is attacked, Russia will step in to help them. And I don't think people here in the United States government are eager for a confrontation with Russia. And but Israel, on the other hand, they're still out there bombing what they claim to be Iranian resources in Syria. And with that mutual defense pact with the United States, Israel is now free to start a war anywhere they want in the Middle East, knowing that the United States is now committed to spend your money and send your children to help, quote unquote, protect Israel. Even in the case of wars Israel starts. Of course, Israel never starts a war. They always come out and say, we had good intelligence that this other country was getting ready to do bad things to us. So it was preemptive war. It's always defensive preemptive war. Same lie that we get from our own government. So it is a bit of a mess. All right, there are now reports coming out of the British newspaper, The Telegraph, saying that Hamas is plotting attacks against Israel from Turkey, and that Erdogan is basically not opposed to this. Apparently, the only admonition he has said is to tell Hamas to stay away from Turkish institutions. Erdogan is a wild card. He's the loose cannon on deck, and nothing good's going to come out of that one here. All right, as you're probably already aware, the International Criminal Court is looking at a complaint from the Palestinian Authority over Israel's actions in the Palestinian territories. And Netanyahu is now arguing that the ICC has no jurisdiction to investigate the Palestinian territories because only sovereign nations can file a complaint with the International Criminal Court. And Israel's position, of course, there's never been a sovereign Palestinian state. Now, that, of course, is a complete lie. It's been one of the lies that Israel has put out ever since they carved off a chunk of Palestine for Israel. But, Palestine has been on the map since the Middle Ages. They had their own coinage. And they had their own civil structure. They were a sovereign nation. It's not like Netanyahu has the authority to go over and say, well, this is a real country, but this one is not. Meanwhile, apparently Israel's raising of that marketplace in Hebron was only the start. Apparently Israel is now looking at literally taking over the entire town of Hebron. And It's a classic case of Israel's actions in the West Bank seem little more than a desire to compensate for lost opportunities and settle old scores. And Hebron is next in the crosshairs, especially now that they have the blessing of Donald Trump, that, you know, the settlements in the occupied territories are not really illegal under international law, which was kind of interesting because the United Nations General Assembly just passed a resolution, unfortunately non-binding because it is the General Assembly, basically saying that, yeah, those settlements are illegal under international law, at which point the United States ambassador to the UN went on out there screaming and frothing at the mouth and saying, no, 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 you anti-Semites, you Jew haters, you know, those settlements, you know, are Lebensraum for you know, Israel, so they can lure all these other Jews from other countries and then turn around and sue those other countries for whatever the Jews had to leave behind. Over in South Korea, there's been a protest, and it's linked to that dispute between Seoul and Washington about sharing defense costs. And it's caused a lot of tension, and some politicians even demanded that he be deemed persona non grata and just kicked on out of South Korea. So I think it's time to take a phone call here. Mark in North Carolina. Aloha, Mark. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, Mike, you just talking about that defense pact. I looked it up. Evidently, it hasn't been signed yet. Yeah. But I think Trump is looking to push something like this. We got to make sure this doesn't happen. This would be a total disaster, and it would be a sellout and a betrayal to our troops.
I mean, they're basically talking about putting Israel in charge of our military, and like Israel's already got access, unfettered access to weapons that we have stored over there. They have direct connection and control to our missile systems. They have complete access to the NSA's spy take on everybody without any filtering or censorship, which includes our politicians. And yeah, it's like Israel has covertly taken over the United States of America.
I know, you know, it's bad enough, NATO, that we have a NATO pact. We shouldn't have any of these pacts. It goes against George Washington's warnings about foreign entanglement. But this little pipsqueak of a country, this brutal apartheid regime, and that's all Israel is today. A brutal apartheid regime with a gangster as their, an indicted gangster now as their prime minister or president, whatever.
Okay, Mark, stay on the line. We're going to put you on hold. Got to take a break for commercials, and we'll be right back. Aloha, America. Welcome back to the show here. I'm watching this story on Fox News where apparently this comedian, Whitney Cummings, was literally reported to Human Resources by an intern for saying Merry Christmas. And that is just so over the top. All right, we're talking with Mark in North Carolina. We're talking about Israel. We're talking about the inadvisability of this mutual defense pact and how Israel seems to basically be taking covert control of more and more of the machinery of our government.
Reason what's going on. And, you know, you talk about wanting to impeach Trump. This is an impeachable offense. If he's behind this, or for that matter, if he can't control his own neocons and ziocons and whatever other cons he's got in his government, if he can't control them, he needs to be impeached. But for that, not for this nonsense with Ukraine where he actually did something good. This is treason, Mike. You're selling this country out to some little punk foreign nation who doesn't do a thing for us. Everything we do for them, we keep giving them money. We got millions of homeless people in this country all around. We got millions of vets, or hundreds of thousands at least of vets living in the street.
Yep.
Many committed suicide, having all kinds of problems for the stupid wars that Israel partly at least got us into in the first place. Okay?
Yes.
And yet we keep on shoveling money to this theocracy. That's really what they are. They're a theocracy, and they're basically and not to mention being an apartheid regime. I mean, what is going on with this country? We got to get control of this country and the leadership of this country. I don't care if it's left, right, or anything else. I'm tired of these people keep saying socialism, socialism. Socialism is not the problem. The problem is a predatory type of capitalism and a lobbyist system where small groups of people, mostly with a lot of money and a lot of influence, are able to basically push their way around and get against the will of the majority of the people of this country. Okay, that's the problem. It's not socialism. I'll take some form of socialism over the predatory capitalism we got now. I mean, if we had and by the way, I didn't watch the debate because Tulsi was in, but I heard later on today that Bernie Sanders called Netanyahu a racist. Very good. He might be our only hope because he is not a Zionist. He may be Jewish, but he's not a Zionist. And somebody's got to stick it. And watch, they're going to be calling him anti-Semitic very soon too. That's coming if they haven't already started it. Okay, these people are crazy. They're evil. They're rotten. They're traitors. Betraying, and they're betraying our country. And by the way, when I say Zionist, I'm also talking about the Christian Zionists. I'm talking about clowns like Glenn Beck, by the way, who's starting some. Every once in a while I'll listen to this guy just to see what the enemy is thinking. Okay, and he's a very clever enemy because he'll give you a lot of lies, a lot of truth, and a lot of half truths. And he's organizing something again. Watch this guy. This guy is not our friend. Okay, he is a vicious Zionist of the worst type.
Okay, Mark, I got to let you go. We got to take a break for station identification. We'll be back with another phone call after these few words. Aloha, America. Welcome back to our show. Hour number 2. The phone lines are open, 800-313-9443. We're going to go back to the phones right now to Don in Arizona. Don, thank you for waiting so patiently. What's on your mind?
Hello?
You're on the air.
Yeah, I'm sorry. This guy had to go downstairs, open the door. Israel. The topic of Israel. By the way, Mike. Thomas, your other caller, Mark, was right that Israel is bad news. But what are you going to do? There is no candidate you can vote for. Yeah, Bernie Sanders pays lip service. He tries to. Maybe he's going to come out. Is he actually? But if he has is he going to cut aid, the $3 billion every year? No, he's not going to change anything. He's still going to go along with the Pentagon. I mean, it's hard to imagine anybody changing anything. They can't go in. Apparently, no president can go in there and change the foreign policy. Period, because the Pentagon is running itself. That's what it looks like to me. I mean, if there was a candidate, I thought that would get us away from paying $3 billion a year to Israel for nothing, I would do it. By the way, I got that book you were talking about, By Way of Deception. Is that what it's called?
Yes.
You can get it I got it for less than $2 from a used paperback. It's pretty cheap from Amazon.com. But by the way, Mike, there's a friend of mine here is from Jordan. He's born in Jordan. He lives here in Arizona. He'd like to comment a little bit because whenever I talk to him about Israel, he's amazed that I know something about the way everything is over there. So here he is. His name is Hamid.
Hello?
Hello, how you doing?
Pretty good. Is this like a TV show or a radio show or what?
It's a radio show, and some of our callers have been talking about Israel, and of course, Don there was mentioning the book By Way of Deception, which was written by this former Mossad agent, whose name eludes me at the moment, but I understand he's become an artist and has a gallery there in Arizona.
Yeah, I'm from Jordan, and I deal a lot with Palestinians and Jews, and I think that this whole situation over there is never going to be solved except if there's going to be talking and discussing and concessions with from both sides, because you got people that has no place to call home, you know, and they used to have a home, and I have like some Palestinian friends that had houses confiscated, and in 1948, you know, a bunch of them, and they just lost their identity, you know, and these people are not going to rest, you know, in their soul. None of these people are going to rest until they have a home and have a place to call home, you know. Anyway, sorry, let me hang up on this phone call. Anyway, I think it's Trump asking for money. It is. They've been calling me every day, and it's from Washington D.C. asking for money for the. I'm barely paying bills, so I can't do that right now.
Yes.
Anyway, so this whole situation has to be resolved, or there's never going to be peace, you know, or rest in the Middle East, because you have a population that's growing, Palestinian population, and it's going to. I mean, they have no rights, no place to call home, and they're surrounded from all sides by the Israeli siege, you know, and because they come to Jordan and they're really they're just leaving the country, or and one of them, a friend of mine, his dad owned a property in Palestine in 1937, and he lost it when the Israelis came and took over, and took his house. And when he went back, he had to get a visa to go to see his own house. You know, he knelt down on his knees, and he was crying in tears, man. An old 82-year-old man crying, looking at the house that he was born in. It's just it breaks your heart, you know.
Yes.
I mean, I have Jewish friends, and I know they need a place to call home and everything, and I believe in that also. But to be controlling a whole people, you know, to expand your goals and take more land is just totally ungodly.
Yes.
I don't think any religion, you know, will God, you know, is God is watching, and I don't think that's the right thing to do. I live in this country, and I always help people. You know, I help Christians and Jews, and I take care of everybody because I work in a homeowners association. You know, and I treat every person like I treat myself, and I never finish the job until everybody's happy. And I got more Christmas gifts than I'm a Muslim, you know, and I got more than my Christian coworkers. So everybody's been so nice because I take care of everybody like it's my own, you know. I hope one day everybody will get along and make this world a better place. Because it's very sad right now, you know. Isn't just watching the government. It's very sad.
It just seems to be getting worse and worse every day that goes by. And like Mark, I'm very concerned over this mutual defense pact, which apparently was something that Netanyahu and Powell cooked up. And
exactly.
The sense I got was that it actually took Donald Trump by surprise. And, you know, bit by bit, Israel is taking control of the machinery of our government. And
exactly, you know, I was looking at that because there was the fight between the Democrats and the Republicans, and I was looking on the internet on how many people that's pro-Israeli in the American government. You know, is amazing. They have control of this government. You know, and I mean, there's nothing wrong with being dual citizens and having two countries, but because I'm an American and Jordanian at the same time, so, but when you start using it for your own benefit, for your own country, it's just not right. Because
well, you know the old saying, no man can serve two masters.
Exactly, that's right. You know, so. And it's all about money and power, and I mean, that's why he's indicted for all these criminal activities in Israel, you know. So I think they're having the same situation over there with corruption and all that. So, yep. I mean, Israel can handle themselves by themselves. So they don't need help from the United States. But
No,
I mean,
they
we're fighting.
really don't. I mean, they've got one of the world's most modern military. They've got nuclear weapons. They're not really.
Exactly.
They're not really being threatened by their neighbors. What they want to do is they want to basically expand Israel from the Nile to the Euphrates. Right.
Exactly. That's what they believe. Exactly. That's what they believe in their books. You know. So, and that's a big problem because that means you're gonna run over everybody else, the Jordanians and the Egyptians and the Iraqis, and to get to where you want. And so that's what we see right now. You know, they're taking little piece by piece. You know, and also that piece of land towards Jordan that they were trying to annex. You know, it's not a good situation, and it's gonna drag the United States into some deep stuff. You know, I hate to say it because you don't make friends like that. You know, when you side with one country, and you gotta treat everybody as people. You know, and as you know. I know I don't believe in extremism. You know, and people killing people for religion and all that. Totally against it. You know, the majority of the Jordanian people and the Palestinian people, they want to be in peace and work and develop their countries and do their religion. And Palestine has a lot of Christians also, and my family is my family is Muslims, and we have a lot of Christian friends, and also it's the best way to go is dialogue and no more taking sides, and just treat people as people, and you know, it's God's way, you know, not run over people, and just especially when you have a country that has nuclear weapons against people with drugs, you know. And,
yes, it is a little one-sided there, and here we have, at a time when our economy is really struggling along, you know, our Congress just keeps sending more and more money to Israel, and it's shameful. It's absolutely
exactly.
shameful.
You know how many people I see outside every time I go to Circle K or the store or anything, homeless people in every direction you go to.
Yes.
People starving in Tucson, Arizona. You know, it's the saddest thing, man. And I help as much as I can. I'm always, you know, stopping and giving money or food or whatever. But you know, it's sad when one missile can feed half of Tucson. You know, it's ungodly. It's just breaks your heart, you know.
Our government has got some really messed up priorities, and that's because Israel has some messed up priorities. You know, it's exactly like Gorbachev said, you know, America's government is obsessed with weapons. George Bernard Shaw, I think, put it best in The Devil in Don Juan. You know, there's nothing in man's industry but his greed and his sloth. His heart is in his weapons. And, you know, everybody likes to play with their guns and their bombs and their bullets and everything. And it makes them feel more butch, I guess.
Exactly. I mean, we need to be more think about people as people, and that you know, give everybody their chance to speak, you know, and explain themselves, because you got the Palestinians are surrounded from all directions and have no rights, and it's so hard to leave or come in or bring goods or live as human beings. You know, they live. I mean, my sister, she lectures in the universities over there, and she went over there to Israel and Palestine, and she couldn't believe it. You know, these people are under siege. You know, they're like in a big jail. That's what it is, and I mean, eventually it's going to explode. I mean, people can't take it. You know, they're human beings.
Yes. No, you know, if you look at the history It always seems to be repeating itself. What Israel is doing to the United States right now mirrors what the Zionists were doing in Germany, which basically created a political climate that was conducive to the rise of the Nazis. Because it was that resentment that united all the people.
I feel this is my feeling is everywhere. I mean, I have a lot of Jewish friends and I have respect for them, but the governments themselves, like you said, they go in and they want to take over every place they go to. They want to have power and they corrupt it, and it's just I hate to say it, but I have respect for the Jewish people as a people, and but not the people in charge, like you said.
Yeah, it is the government that does it. Before the creation of the State of Israel, Muslims and Christians and Jews all got along very well in Palestine.
Exactly. That's what my dad told me. And
yeah,
exactly. We were our neighbor, actually my friend's grandfather and his grandmother. They had their Jewish neighbors. They got along so well. Exactly right. That is totally right. And that's in the 30s and 20s and 10s. And it was very peaceful there until they decided the divisions and all that. And the British left all this area, and then it started. The whole area started getting ripped to pieces.
Yes.
Oh. Yeah.
All right. Well, listen, I've got the phone lines are loading up here, and thank you for the information.
Okay, no problem.
And I wish you luck for all the good work that you're trying to do there in Arizona.
We're the good people, We're the good people. We're trying, and with people like us, we can make this better world that everybody gets along and everybody is respected, and lives with dignity.
I would like to see that happen very much. All right. Well, listen, thank you very much for the phone call. We're going to let you go. And we're going to go to Jim in New York. Aloha, Jim. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Oh, hi, Mike. A very sad story from the previous caller, but as far as the Palestinians, they don't have a pot to piss in with Trump as president. They have no chance, the Palestinians under the Trump administration, forget about them. Trump, I hate to say, but he's an Israeli firster. Whatever Israel wants, Israel's going to get. And I had a thought. I was watching the Army-Navy game last Saturday, and President Trump went to Franklin Field in Philadelphia, and the whole stadium of Army and Navy people were cheering him like you couldn't imagine.
Yeah.
And that's why I think Trump was selected. It's to get the military behind him and middle America behind him for a coming war in the Middle East. They couldn't sell a war under Hillary, but they're going to try to sell a war under a, quote, conservative champion, populist, nationalist Trump. And that's what I've always suspected. They could never sell a war under Hillary because her personality was just so horrible. But they may be able to sell one under Trump. And I'm
not so sure about that last part. I'm not sure about that at all. I think America as a whole, we're war weary. We have been fighting wars all around the world, counting Afghanistan for 18 years in 7 countries that we know of, and who knows how many covert actions in other countries.
Yes. But by the response of the military at the Army-Navy game, they were very, very enthusiastic about President Trump, which is nice, but it also has me worried that the Israelis who are behind Trump are going to use that for one more push for a war with Syria and Iran, the 7 countries that Wesley Clark talked about. There's still a couple more to go.
Yes.
So I think they're going to try to use Trump and his populist nationalism to try to rally middle America for one more push for Israel. And that's been my fear and suspicion since day one. They're going to try to use Trump. And it's just a thought. But I would be...
Well, if that were really the case, you would think more of the Jews in Congress would have leapt to Trump's defense because, I mean, there's nobody up in that Democratic lineup that they could use to sell more wars to the American people. And as you said before, they couldn't use Hillary either, just because everybody, we're sick and tired of Hillary and her terrible plastic surgery job here. All right, well, listen, Jim, we're going to have to let you go. We got to take a break for commercials, and we'll be back after these few words, so stay tuned. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here. Now, Izvestia is reporting that Russia has deployed hypersonic missile fighters along the Arctic and Pacific coasts to protect its maritime borders. And they're basically sending a message saying, don't get close to our borders. So MiG-31 supersonic interceptor jets have been outfitted with the KH-47M2 Kinsal, which is Russian for dagger. It is a nuclear-capable air-launched ballistic missile and deployed to the Kola Peninsula and the Kamchatka regions of the country. It's a powerful move. And it is basically indicating that Russia is basically going to consolidate its control of those regions of the Arctic. And the Arctic, unfortunately, is shaping up to be a new battleground. Mostly because they've discovered there's a lot of oil underneath that abyssal plain. Of course, getting at it is going to be difficult, as they found out with the Deepwater Horizon. Let's talk about the economic news here. U.S. freight shipments fell below their 2014 levels, hit by shale oil and gas bust. Manufacturing and construction are also down. The only thing that's really up is the stock market. It closed in record territory again. But as I mentioned earlier in the week, the stock market no longer represents the state of the national economy. It's basically an indicator of how rich the already rich people are, who view Wall Street as their private little elite club. Apparently over in Great Britain, homelessness has increased by 9%. And it continues to rise, according to the latest information gathered by one of the United Kingdom's leading charities. Shelter says that their analysis of government data shows the number of homeless people has increased by 23,000 to 280,000 homeless people since 2016. That's a 9% overall increase in homelessness and an 11% increase in rough sleepers specifically. And I'm sure that, the influx of refugees because of the open border is putting more of a strain on the British economy, as it is everywhere else. All right, we're going to take another phone call. Tony in Los Angeles. Aloha, Tony. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, Michael. I listen all the time. I usually just call in and say Merry Christmas every year to you and the lady.
Merry Christmas to you, too.
Sorry, I'm kind of off topic completely. I'm on the road and, visiting family. Just remember to call you this year. I think I missed the last year, so that was it. Other than that, I just saw Star Wars, and despite what the critics are saying, it was kind of good. So if you got extra time or whatever this weekend, you won't be disappointed. Despite all that.
We're going to wait until it comes on pay-per-view because most movie theater seats are very uncomfortable for Claire. So we're just going to wait patiently until
that's right,
on
that's
pay-per-view. And of course,
about that.
for me, a very telling sign is they're trying to do a fast burn. They were doing a story about the rise of Skywalker on Fox News earlier and talking about this one theater that's literally running this movie almost 24 hours a day. You know, the last showing is at 3 o'clock in the morning. And so they're out there saying, well, it made $40 million in its opening night. But I think what they're doing is a fast burn. And again, I haven't seen the movie, so I don't know. But
yeah, I was hearing all this stuff. It was garbage, and I don't know. I'm a Gen Xer. I've been, my dad took me to see that was my first movie in a theater. There was one cringy scene, but it was only 1 second, and it was like a background, extra person. And I was at the end when they were all celebrating. But other than that, I was surprised. It was actually it wasn't bad. Not a lot of plot, but a lot of scenery. They closed it out kind of good.
Well, okay. I mean, I certainly intend to see it when it comes on pay-per-view, and I'll withhold judgment until then. But there has been a lot of negative social media talk about it.
Yeah.
It's not as good as some of the earlier films. And they're saying part of the problem is J.J. Abrams tried to be a little too politically correct.
Yeah, there's that. But if you just go in it, you got a couple hours. It's not a bad deal. They didn't ruin it. In other words, not like the last movie. Number 8 was kind of I didn't like it. Anyways, I'm not a show for Star Wars. I just it's not as bad as all the flack I'm hearing. I went in to see it anyways, just because everybody else wanted to see it.
Like I said, when it comes on pay-per-view, we will watch it, and I'll have an opinion about it after that. Anyway, we're coming up here on another commercial break, so Tony, thank you very much for the phone call. We got another caller waiting on the line, and we'll be right back. Aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here. We're going to go back to the phones to Al in Canada. Aloha, Al. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hi, Mike. I called to talk to you about the Baltic Dry Index.
Yes.
It's basically the shipping cost of goods around the world. It's been flat for a very, 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 very long time.
That's a bad sign.
Yeah. Well, is it? I mean, you can look at these sorts of things a lot of different ways. Basically, maybe countries are becoming more self-sufficient. I mean, obviously, Russia is. But, I mean, this has been flat for over 30 years. There was some peaking, around 2005.
Yes.
To, that big crash. But basically, that just means it costs more to ship things, right? It doesn't mean more products are being shipped.
The Baltic Dry Index is a measure of the volume of shipping, not its cost.
Well, the Baltic Dry Index, which measures the cost of shipping goods around the world, slumped for 13th straight session on Friday. I mean, we're in a slump right now.
Yes.
And actually, I mean, when you think about it, I mean, we've been in a slump for a long, long time. Probably since around 1971. Wages have been flat, and costs have gone up. We have been in a slump.
Yes.
We're going on 50 years. And that's the actual reality of the situation we're talking about here. Nothing has gotten better in 50 years. Nothing.
No.
And they hide it. So, I mean, is the economy doing well? No, of course not. And, the Federal Reserve is just pumping cash, liquidity. They're creating the currency out of thin air, and they're just pumping it out. They're giving these no or low interest rate loans to banks and borrowing, or I should say, buying bad debt. And the plunge protection team is out there making sure those stocks look good because everybody loves looking at their 401ks thinking they're richer than they are. When in
Yes.
reality, like you said, the stock market is not a good indicator of how healthy the economy is. It's actually a very good indicator of how rigged an economy is. There are less companies in the stock market today than there were 40 years ago. Just like there are less media companies today.
Somebody just emailed me an article on the Baltic Dry Index saying that it's basically slumped for a 13th straight session today, pressured by weaker demand for all vessel categories. Apparently, the index dropped 28 points or 2.4%. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right. So
but if you look at that, if you
doesn't
take
look
it
like
onto
it's
all,
flat.
if you click on all, it's flat.
Well, let's see. Where's the all button?
Just under the chart, you'll see it on the left-hand side, just under 1990.
Gotcha.
Yeah. This is one of my favorite websites for going for economic news, tradingeconomics.com, because you can see everything about a lot of different countries' economies around the world. It's a great website. You've seen this website before.
I think I have, yes, just not recently.
Oh yeah, I know you have. I know you have for a fact. There it is, right there. I mean, this is everything. I mean, look at these commodities. I mean, it's just on and on and on and on and on and on and on. It's everything and everything under the sun that gets shipped around the world. So they got a pretty good idea of what's going on, and I mean, it's all right there. Like I said, Mike, the economy has been in the dumps.
Yes.
Literally in the dumps for 50 years now.
Yes.
And that's the fact. I mean, it's the truth. We keep getting poorer. They keep creating more and more currency, and it's being hoarded. I don't mean the actual physical currency is being hoarded, but what this currency can buy, what this currency can purchase. And of course, the ones who get it first get the instant benefit of it, and then the inflation starts to trickle through the system, which is actually not the price is going up, but it's actually the value of that currency going down.
Yes.
But people see it as the price going up. But that's not really what it is. It's
too much currency chasing too few goods and services, and that's always going to result in higher prices. Prices always rise to absorb the available capital.
That's it. In a nutshell, that is it exactly.
Yeah.
So, I mean, there's a reason we're not taught these sorts of things in school, because then we would all know.
Yes. No, they want
these
us,
are the things that are behind the curtain.
Ignorant consumers. That's what they want us all to be.
Yeah, and I don't know about you, Mike. I'm not a consumer. I'm a human being. I'm not a consumer at all. If when you start making up these little categories of places to put people, all it does is breaks us down and breaks us down and breaks us down, and then we fight amongst ourselves. And they love that.
Yes.
Divide and conquer. Keep dividing, keep conquering, and sooner or later, like you said, we'll all be walking lock, stock, and barrel, just like in Metropolis, into the socialistic utopia that they have planned for us. That's all I have to say, Mike. I think I straightened out what was going on with PayPal.
Okay.
If I could just say a little bit about PayPal, people need to be really worried, or not worried, but very, very conscious about someone calling you. I never fell for it, but there is a number out there that is a PayPal scam ripoff. PayPal will not call anybody unless they call PayPal first.
Yes.
Just always remember that, right? Never give out your personal information, especially personal financial information, to anyone that calls you on the phone. Never, ever, ever. I don't care who it is. There are scams going on all over the world, And, you know, PayPal is one of them, the CRA, you know, like they're the Canadian revenue agencies. There's one going around up here. There's, you know, duct cleaning and all these. You know what kills me, Mike? You go to pay for something at a cashier and they hit you for a charity.
Yes.
I don't know whether that happens where you live.
Yes, it does.
Don't fall for that. I'd like to say it's a scam because you don't get you don't get a receipt that you can write it off so that you can write it off on your taxes. Real charities you can write off on your taxes. But these ones where whoever is controlling this charity, they're the ones that are getting rich by this.
Yes.
It's not right. All this cash that's quote unquote being donated is not going to actually. All of it is not going to actually where it should go. So don't feel bad about saying no at the cash register when they ask you if you want to contribute to this or contribute to that. No, I will not do that. I appreciate your time, Mike. You have a good one.
All right. Yeah. And you're absolutely right here. We live in an age of the scams. And for the most part, the government doesn't seem interested in dealing with it. It's only if the scammers go into a government computer, the hackers rather go into a government computer, then they'll do something about it. Or worse, they violate the copyright of movie studios, and then they'll take them down like they did those three the other day. But the scams that are hitting ordinary people, it's epidemic. It's epidemic. And, I'm getting more scam calls than real calls on my cell phone these days. That's how bad it is. All right, getting back to the economic news here, the retail apocalypse is continuing. Apparently, this year, and the year isn't quite over yet, a record 9,300 stores closed across the U.S. And basically, Payless, Gymboree, Fred's, Walgreens, Family Dollar, and many more. And of course, they still like to blame the online sales. And yes, the online sales are a point of competition. But I really do think it's just the fact people just don't have the money to spend. And we were looking over here in the town of Santa Claus. There's an ornament store and there's a toy store, obviously. And they're saying business has actually been very slow for the Christmas season this year. In fact, there's one of the storefronts over there never even opened this winter. So I know we're being told we've got the greatest economy ever. And they're certainly waving that stock market around like it's a flag, saying, look how good things are for the people who already have money. But these are very, very hard times, which is why it's even more angering that our government continues to shower Israel with all of this money. Millions and millions, billions with a B. U.S. Steel shares plunge, dividends slashed, buybacks halted, 1,500 workers cut amid deepening manufacturing recession. That is definitely a bad bit of business here. Now, one of the things that Trump campaigned on back in 2016 was reviving American manufacturing, bringing the companies back from other countries, and he got a few of them to come in. One has already changed their mind and headed back offshore again. But it's just really tough out there. And apparently over in Japan, it's becoming more and more difficult for people to retire. And so the elderly are starting to get these powered exoskeletons so they can continue working into their old age. I know it sounds like science fiction, Alien, Avatar, Elysium, not to mention Iron Man. But apparently they're stepping into these powered exoskeletons so they can continue laboring into their old age and stall retirement for as long as possible. Okay. Russia has become the world's #1 exporter of wheat and other agriculture. Surpassed the U.S. and Canada, and that's a tremendous accomplishment. Part of it is because Russia bans GMO. And most of the rest of the world do not want to have GMO. With a reference to Japan again, GMO in food is illegal there, or at least the food has to be labeled contains GMO. Very, very concerned about that. Now, this one, I think, borders on being just a little sick. There is a startup company in Britain, and they have designed a toilet for your place of employment that is tipped slightly forward by about 13 degrees. So if you sit on it for longer than 5 minutes, it starts hurting. The idea is to boost employee productivity by, getting them out of that bathroom as quickly as they can and back to the punch press. And that really is treating people like they're livestock. It really is. All right, a little bit of good news. The Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals has overturned the individual mandate in Obamacare. It was a 2-to-1 panel vote, and so that's now gone. And I think it's time we go back to having competitive health insurance, where the insurance companies are motivated to keep their costs down and their service high, rather than the Obamacare model where the premiums are high, the deductibles are high, and the insurance companies rolling in the dough. Talking about immigration and refugees here, Sweden is in an uproar over this video that came out, went viral. This immigrant gang was abusing and then urinating on a Swedish boy. And basically, it's one of what they call domination crimes, which is now sweeping across Scandinavia. And it's basically unprovoked violence with the intention to humiliate. So a video of this immigrant gang humiliating a Swedish boy by beating him and urinating on him, published by the news outlet Samhällsnytt, has sparked strong reactions in the Scandinavian nation. Yeah, it would here too, I presume. In the video, at least 2 of the perpetrators are seen and heard hitting and kicking the boy while calling him names such as bastard and mother, fill in the blank. Forced him to open his mouth or urinating on him. So how's that open borders, welcome all the refugee thing working out for you? Really? All righty. Illegal aliens in this country are celebrating after winning access to driver's licenses in New Jersey, which basically that law was passed the same day as New York's law. And very troubling development. Somebody was asking, well, if you've got all these illegal immigrants in a line waiting to get a driver's license, just send in ICE and arrest them. Well, they can't, because the New York law prevents the Department of Homeland Security from investigating these people. So this was signed into law by Governor Andrew Cuomo. All righty, let's talk about the world of public relations, which is a fancy name for lying to the public for fun and profit. And apparently right now, public relations people, they're everywhere on the web, selling all kinds of ridiculous ideas. The article was titled, "Toxic Sludge is Good for You." And basically, these shows are paid to sway public opinion on everything from nuclear energy to GMOs to presidential elections and corn sugar, which is the new name for high fructose corn syrup. Nobody questions it. You need to know it's out there. That a lot of the voices that you're seeing on social media that are arguing for what seems like a really stupid idea, they're paid to be there. These so-called social media influencers, a lot of them are getting paid big bucks to influence you in certain direction. Okay, we got to take a break for commercials. We'll be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here. Now, French authorities have fined Bloomberg 5 million euros for disseminating fake news. And apparently this comes from France's financial markets watchdog. And they fined Bloomberg for publishing false information about the financial situation at Vinci, a French construction company. The report caused an 18% drop in the company's share and a loss of 6 billion euros in overall market value. Got to check your facts and figures before you go on out there and say something like that. Of course, part of the job of the financial press, it's basically to push certain stocks. They're not there to really inform you about what stocks are doing well and what stocks are not doing well. They're out there to rah-rah for companies that basically pay them to go on out and say, this is the stock you got to buy. Get this stock, or you stay away from this company. Very, very dishonest here. All right, earlier in the week, we were talking about how prosecutors said they had lost the video of Jeffrey Epstein's first suicide attempt. Now, the reason this became an issue is that Epstein's estate's lawyers have been of the opinion that Epstein did not try and kill himself that first time, that he was in fact attacked by his then cellmate, this former cop who's on trial for a quadruple homicide. And so they wanted this tape, and they went to the court and said, we need to see this tape. It's key evidence in our case. And the prosecutor said, well, we can't find it. Today they came on out, apparently realizing how bad this all looked with the malfunctioning cameras from the night Epstein actually died, and said, we found the tape. We know where it is. We're working on getting a copy. So I don't know, they're just going to set the camera up there outside the cell and let it run and have a tape that doesn't show anything. All right, let's talk about Ebola. Now, Ebola is a very, very serious disease. Well, it depends. There are different strains of Ebola. Some are very low threat. Ebola restin won't even infect human beings. It has no effect on them whatsoever. You know, kills monkeys like crazy, but not human beings. Then you have at the other end of the spectrum, Ebola Mayenga, which will kill 98% of everybody who gets it. And right now they're dealing with what is being called pig Ebola, which is all over Indonesia, and it's already killed about 1/4 of the world's pigs. The other day, we were talking about this report out of China that a lot of the pig illnesses were being deliberately spread by criminal gangs who would make the pigs sick. Then they would buy the pigs for pennies on the dollar and then repackage the meat and sell it to stores as healthy, untainted meat. Terrible thing to do. And so, you know, a lot of people are concerned about that. Now, Ebola is, in theory, able to jump species. The official theory of where Ebola came from was that it originated in the green vervet monkey and then jumped to humans. More about Ebola after we come back from station identification. Aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here. Hour number 3. The phone lines are open, 800-313-9443. We're talking about Ebola, where there's apparently a strain that is infecting pigs and killing them off. In Indonesia, and that, of course, coupled with the loss of pigs up in China. Pork is going to become very expensive. It's going to become a luxury good in the very, very near future. So if you like your bacon and whatnot, stock up now. You know, in fact, it generally might be a good idea if you have the room in your home. If you have, for example, a garage, it might be time to get a chest freezer and start stocking up on things, because there are going to be food shortages going into next year. Well, apparently over in New York, they may be pretending that the threat of an Ebola outbreak here in the United States doesn't exist, even though there has been concern raised about some of these refugees, particularly from Africa, apparently testing positive. And at least one of them had to go to the hospital to be treated. And New York has actually started quietly hiring an Ebola task force, which tells us that despite the public pronouncement, hey, there's no Ebola here, come spend your tourism dollars, that in point of fact, authorities are concerned. And they really ought to be. Ebola can be very nasty. And part of the problem with Ebola, it's a single RNA strand filovirus, which means it mutates very rapidly generation to generation to generation, which means it can change its characteristics literally overnight. So apparently the New York City Department of Health and Mental Hygiene, in conjunction with partner group Public Health Solutions, filled a temporary position for a short-term project set to end in May of next year that involves keeping track of the Ebola virus as it continues to spread around the world. Now, according to the job description for this position, Public Health Solutions had been looking for someone to support the Ebola and special pathogen preparedness programming for healthcare partners, including designated treatment centers, network coalitions, and partner agencies. So very quietly in the back room, they are in fact getting ready to deal with an Ebola outbreak. Okay, down in Virginia, they're still going back and forth over these proposed laws coming from the Democrats that would basically render almost every gun down there illegal. And so far, 79% of Virginia, their counties, have declared themselves gun sanctuaries, saying that the gun laws will not be enforced. They've got 95 Second Amendment sanctuaries, more to come, and 5 more Texas counties have now passed Second Amendment sanctuary resolutions. This is where that whole sanctuary concept has backfired on the Democrats. You know, it was a great thing to have for the illegal immigrants, but for guns, no, we can't do that. We can't do that. Jim Fetzer had an article, was picked up and run in Natural News, saying that the Virginia Democrats are literally going to unleash a martial law attack on Second Amendment counties using roadblocks to confiscate firearms. That they're just going to stop cars and search them, and every time they find a firearm, it's going to be confiscated. Now, this has got to go up to the Supreme Court right away, which, given its past history, will reaffirm the Second Amendment gives law-abiding citizens the right to keep and bear arms. It's an individual right, not a collective one. Although in the Common Core curriculum, they actually rewrote it. They rewrote the Second Amendment to basically make it look like you have to be part of a government-controlled militia to be allowed to have a gun. That's not what it actually says. Good reason to homeschool your kids here. Okay, there's the issue about whether sheriffs would or would not comply with the law. And apparently, at least one sheriff is saying he opposed the law, but it's not my job to oppose a law. My job is to enforce the law. I will still confiscate your guns. And already voters are mounting a campaign to vote him out of his sheriffness and put somebody else in there. Out in California, they have a new ammo law. And apparently it is requiring background checks for all ammunition transfers. It went into effect July of this year, and it's a total disaster. Now, reportedly, it has blocked 62,000 people from buying ammunition, of which only 101 were actual criminals and flagged as prohibited persons. The rest of these thousands of people were stopped because of technical errors. Errors with names and addresses matching the California database appear to be the main problem. So, good idea, bad implementation. It's not even really a good idea. Probably going to get more people into hand loading here. All right, we're going to do a shout out to our honor affiliates who are just now rejoining the network here. Down in Florida, 2 Floridian parents who are vegan have been charged with murder after their baby literally starved to death. At the time the child died, it weighed only 17 pounds, was an 18-month-old son, weighed only 17 pounds. That's normally what a 7-month-old healthy baby should weigh. So a Lee County grand jury indicted Ryan Patrick O'Leary and Sheila O'Leary on charges of first-degree murder and aggravated child abuse, aggravated manslaughter, child abuse, and 2 counts of child neglect. All right, so let's talk about the Starliner. I've actually gotten a few emails. Apparently, a lot of people got up before sunrise to watch this thing launch, and they took a lot of pictures of the contrails, and some of them quite spectacular here. But they did botch it up. Now, Boeing is out there saying, well, look at all the things that went right. It launched correctly. It staged correctly. It's in orbit. We're going to get tons of data back from this. But it obviously did not reach the space station, which was the mission objective here. And what appears to have happened is that when the spacecraft was launched, the onboard computer thought it was much further along in its flight path, that it was in much higher, much faster than it really was. And it basically let go of some external boosters and shut the engines down. Now, it was in this orbit, but it lacks the speed and ability to now reach up to the much higher orbit of the space station. So it does feel like this was just a simple computer goof, and they will be able to fix it. And they're looking to basically bring this back down on its airbag system. It lands with an airbag in White Sands, New Mexico on Sunday. And hopefully that will proceed without incident. But the caller we had earlier in the show has absolutely hit it on the head. Boeing is dealing with a management problem. They've got managers who are there because of political connections and connections to key investors. They don't know anything about aviation. They don't know anything about how to build this stuff. You know, they just say, I can't be bothered with that. You people, you H-1B visa students, you make it work. And it really didn't work at all. All righty. I mean, they've got 737 MAX. They're going to hold off making any more of them until after the 1st of next year, maybe way after the 1st of next year. Having problems with the 777X. Boeing used to have a stellar reputation, and now they're in serious, serious trouble. Okay, let's talk about all this political correctness, transgender nonsense. Henry Macau had an article out there saying, confused about your gender? See a shrink. Says the only time the concept of gender gets any respect is when someone doesn't identify with their biological sex. And he says, Kabbalist central bankers are waging a psych war on heterosexuals to undermine the family and destabilize society. And he goes back to the protocols of the Elders of Zion, which a lot of people think is a forgery, but it does seem to accurately predict what's going on right now. It says, we will undermine every collective force except our own, and the nuclear family, along with race, religion, and nation, are the 4 collective forces targeted for destruction. And basically, Mike Stone came on out and said, well, you know, you're saying it's not fair for us to go along with this transgender stuff. But what's not fair is this misguided attempt to try and force everybody else to validate what appears to be a serious mental illness. That's what's not fair. Alrighty, apparently a mother is threatening a council with legal action over setting a transgender policy which tells children to use whichever toilet and changing room they like to use. Meaning the boys can go into the girls' room or the girls' changing room. And Victoria Edwards is fighting Oxfordshire County Council over its trans inclusion toolkit, claiming it puts pupils in danger. And Ms. Edwards has branded the authorities' stance unlawful and damaging because it places the rights of trans-identified children above the rights of everybody else. And she's bang spot correct on that. We're supposed to have a right to privacy. And I think most people are raised to feel that way. And now all of a sudden, you're in the bathroom or you're in the changing room, and somebody from the opposite gender walks on in. It can be unnerving for a lot of people. And to say that they're right and that these other people who are using the toilet and changing room that matches their biological sex, that they're all wrong. It's just, it's a little sick. And I normally don't link to a lot of what Henry Macau says, but he's absolutely right. This is a mental illness. And we're all being pressured to accept it and say, yeah, this is perfectly okay behavior. And no, it really isn't. Because they are, in fact, putting this very tiny minority of people, their supposed rights, above the rights of everybody else, including their right to privacy in their most intimate moments here. Now, actress Charlize Theron apparently has a transgender child, 7-year-old, and he was born a biological male and is now apparently acting and thinking that it's a girl. And she's making a big stink over the fact that people need to use the right pronouns. Well, I'm sorry, if you're looking at somebody that looks like a boy, walks like a boy, acts like a boy, how are you supposed to know? Unless they wear a t-shirt saying, please call me she. And I'm wondering if Charlize did this as, an attempt to keep her star on the ascendancy. And don't get me wrong, she's a very lovely woman, very talented actress, but she has of late started to fade. Apparently, J.K. Rowling got into some trouble, saying biological sex is real, and she was going to give a presentation, and they had to cancel it out of concern for her safety. But, it's genetic. The X and Y chromosomes, that determines what your sex is. And unless you can get on in and genetically engineer and change all those X and Y chromosomes in every single cell of the body, you are the gender you were born to be. We're hearing more stories about women who wanted to transition to being men, and then after all the girl parts are cut off, they regret it. And I imagine it happens the other way as well. Guys who have their plumbing sheared off so that they can wear dresses, and then they come to regret it. That's a big, ugly secret of the transgender movement, is how many people go through the process and then change their mind. They regret it. They got taken for a ride on this thing. Okay, we're going to take a phone call now. Tom in Florida. Aloha, Tom. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Good day to you, Michael. You hear me?
I can hear you just fine. You're on the air.
Yes, sir. Yeah, Michael. The first thing I want to talk about is what's going on with Biden. I watched. I had to turn on 2 minutes of that sham debate they had on, and it blew me away, Michael, because the Democrats are acting like Hunter Biden did nothing wrong. He has 3 women, and Joe Biden's like, how's he going to defend this situation when he's going to say he's a nominee against Trump? Okay, how's this guy going to defend that? I don't see it how it's going to happen. I really don't. And also, here's the main reason I did call you, Michael, is because what's going on with these Democrats. Every one of them keeps saying nobody's above the law. Donald Trump's not above the law. Michael, what about the illegal aliens that are standing in line getting driver's license? Are they above the law?
Apparently.
In New Jersey and New York. The 28 million in illegal aliens, are they above the law? Come here, breaking our law. And these Democrats. And their whole motive is that, Donald Trump's breaking the law. He thinks he's above the law. What hypocrites these Democrats are. I call them the BS party, the Bolshevik socialists. They're nonsense. Yes. And, I talked to your show many times. Until I see Trump saying, hey, these people are going to be arrested, and the media flips out and freaks out. All these CNN and all these ABC alphabet networks freak out, saying, "Oh my God, this guy's a Hitler. He's nuts. He's arresting all these illegals, and he's arresting Democratic Party members. And you know what? He should arrest guys like Romney too, rhinos that are trying to flood this country, this illegal incursion, this illegal invasion. And you know, Michael, like you always say, they're going to rig this election in 2020. I saw it today. Yes. They're going to rig this thing.
Of course they are.
You know, look, Michael, you have wonderful callers that call your show. Everybody's great in my book, even the ones I disagree with. But the guys that are living up there in New York and New Jersey, listen, your vote doesn't even count. No wonder you're so depressed that you can't even, if you are a Republican, you have conservative viewpoints, you're knowing, hey, my state's already gone. I can't vote. What good's my vote? Because other than you could try to change it, it's your vote's like going in the garbage can. Because you know what? You can go to sitting there for 5-10 hours to cast your ballot, but you're knowing your whole state basically is Democrat, and it's a bunch of liberal nuts, kook jobs. I mean, that will depress you. It's like these ones with the Trump syndrome. They're going nuts because these Democrats, a lot of them feel like 1929. They want to jump out of buildings. And if Trump gets reelected, Michael, it's going to be amazing. You're going to have such a health crisis in this country. It'll be amazing. The health issues will be astronomical. These Democrats, I mean, it's insane what's going on here. And you know what, Michael? It's all perpetrated by the media. All these leftist, communist, Bolshevik, socialist media outlets. It's disgusting. And until I see all these rich conservatives pull all their money together and buy one of those major primetime networks, you're going to get a feed of Bolshevikism. Communism is a great thing. Yeah, you know what, y'all, all you Democrats, go down to Cuba for a week and see how you'll love it over there, or Venezuela. I guarantee you, I've been to Cuba, Michael, I can tell you. You won't like it. Unless you're in a resort area, you go 1 mile out of the resort area in Cuba, you think you're in a third world, I don't know what the word is. It's destitution, man. That's the word, destitution. That's what I can tell you. I've been there, I've done that, I know what I'm talking about. I've seen it firsthand with my own eyes. It's not a good thing. It's not a pretty thing. It's disastrous. But again, all these Democrats keep telling everybody on their party and the networks, oh, Donald Trump thinks he's above the law. No, the ones that are thinking he's above the law are these Democrats allowed our country to be invaded.
All right, Tom,
totally invaded by
gotta let you go. Gotta take a break. All right, I'll carry you on over. We'll be right back. Hi, America. Welcome back to our show. We're talking with Tom in Florida. We're talking about immigration. We're talking about impeachment. And just sort of pick up from where you left off.
Yeah, Michael, I'll make it real quick. And everybody, happy holidays. Yeah, Michael, as far as I'm watching right now about the Spies thing with this guy, John Durham. He's ready to come. I'm telling you, I think a lot of people are going to get arrested. I'm having a funny feeling about Brennan and Comey. But, yeah, Michael, another thing is going on with the French. What's going on in France, I believe this guy Macron is not going to get reelected. I think that definitely France is going to be going down the tube soon as far as what's going on with the EU. So I just think that's all I got to really...
There's no way that Macron is going to get reelected. The big issue right now, of course, is that all this unrest in France is devastating to their tourism economy, which is a big part of their economy, especially around Paris. Nobody wants to go into what is effectively turning into a war zone.
Oh, yeah, that's absolutely correct. And, this the whole thing, what's going on with the spies nonsense, spying on Americans and the president, Trump and all that. I mean, can you imagine if this would have been Barry Soetoro, Hussein Obama that was getting spied on, and it was Republican Congress that paid for a dossier? They would be wiped out forever. But the Democrats they can always crawl back and nothing happens because they're Democrats and they got all these different peoples in their party. So you got to forgive them, forget them. I mean, forgive them. I mean, it's absolutely disgusting what's going on through these news networks. And I tell you, Michael, I don't know what's going to. I know Trump's going to win re-election, but and I'm pretty sure he's going to win the House back. But if he doesn't really straighten it out, this is it for the Republicans. This is the last hooray. This is their last hooray because the country's now turning so socialist. I'm hearing that imbecile Bernie Sanders, and the only one that was missing up on stage last night should be running for president is probably that what's that Corey? The guy from Jersey, and there's a few other demon rats that should be running, I guess, with their socialism. But, I'll tell you one thing that did come out of this, that Tulsi Gabbard, maybe she'll pull a lot of people off the Demon Rat Party because she voted present. And I think that's going to be a black eye in the Democrats. And plus, they got one guy that turned Republican, I guess, yesterday or something. So,
yes.
This whole thing is it's a cabal, man. It's a coup. It's the zoo coup. So we'll see what happens. This is what's going on. Is this? I still say that Israel's running the United States in a lot of ways. There's no question about it.
Yeah.
That Steyer, that guy's a real imbecile. That guy's a nitwit. But he's a billionaire, so And Washington that guy Buttigieg, that guy. Michael, this thing, he's the woman in his relationship. You know that, right?
Yes.
So if he got elected, his partner would be the first man, I guess it is. Crazy or fiction, man. It's like some out of a novel. But all I got to say is we'll see what happens. I really think what's really going to be interesting, next year, come up 2020, Michael, and, all the predictions are going to be coming out soon, is I have a feeling Europe and EU is going to fold before the end of December 31st of next year. I think Europe's going to, the EU is going to collapse.
Yes, I agree with you on that one. I mean, Poland's already talking about leaving. I know there are a lot of Germans who want out of the EU. It's been a raw deal for everybody. Apparently, Scotland is going to go for a second independence referendum. And, the globalists have stumbled very, very badly. And they're rushing to try and glue together a new union on this hemisphere with this U.S., Mexico, Canada treaty. But it's not really going to work because we've all seen what the European Union did to Europe and the European people. And no sane person wants that to happen here.
I totally agree, Michael. 100% correct. And I'll let you go on that thought. And, we'll see what happens. It's going to be real interesting in 2020 coming up. We'll see how a lot of things are going to play out. But I really do believe that the Democrats are going to get crushed for this nonsense, this nincompoop stuff. And by the way, Pelosi still hasn't brought the articles over to the Senate, has she yet? Because I've been watching.
No, she hasn't. She hasn't. Her official reason is that until the Senate satisfies her that it will give Trump a fair trial, meaning that they'll railroad him, that she's not going to take the documents over there. And I think the real reason is the Democrats want to avoid the embarrassment of having the impeachment voted down by the Senate going into next year's election. I think that's what's going on.
Well, I totally agree on that too, and totally. But another thing, Michael, until I see these senators in the Republican Party and these congressmen say, "Hey, you're saying that the president of the United States is saying that he's above the law," you people are thinking you're above the law by allowing all these millions of illegals coming here. I've got to see Trump starting arresting them, and I have to agree with Dustin. Trump has better show me something, and immediately within the next 45 days. I want to see people being arrested in the Democratic Party and the Republican Party for allowing these sanctuary cities. I want to see it. No more.
Okay. All right, Tom, thanks an awful lot for the phone call. We're going to let you go. We got to take a commercial break. We have another caller waiting on the line, and we will be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show. We're going to go back to the phones to Heather in Boston. Aloha, Heather. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Aloha, Mike. You sound better. You sound much better, and I'm happy about that.
Me too.
I want to talk about impeachment.
Okay.
I want to talk about electoral college. I want to talk about the states. So we all are trying to hold on to, I live in the state. I didn't even know till this morning, honest to God, that I was voting for nothing when I vote in the presidential election, as I am one of those states, Massachusetts, of the 11. There's 11 states that have decided to give their state's vote to the national popular election.
Yes.
That was signed into law in 2010 under Governor Deval Patrick in Massachusetts. I didn't even know it till I was doing a lot of research on Electoral College this morning. So anyway, I I'm kind of floating a trial balloon, and I'm trying to get people to grasp onto this. Okay.
Okay.
The president is the president is a representative of the states. That's what the Electoral College is all about. And by the House pushing this unconstitutional impeachment, okay, who is disenfranchised, who has standing in a court of law, are the representatives of each and every state that voted for Donald Trump. And I wouldn't care if it was for Donald Duck, okay? It doesn't matter. It matters that we save our system of government in the checks and balances.
Yes.
And it's only the states that can bring suit against the House. I'm not a lawyer, and I have nobody funding me or anything. I'm speaking as a individual citizen. But the states, the people in the states all over the country that can hear my voice, if their state voted for this president, they have to ask their representatives, their governor, their attorney generals to stand by their disenfranchisement in these accusations for impeachment that are not constitutional. They're not in the Constitution. There's nothing there.
Yeah.
There's bribery, treason, high crimes, and misdemeanors. And none of those things have been met. And the only people that are being disenfranchised are each and every state. If we don't do this, if we don't think about this, we're giving the Electoral College up. There's no purpose for it. If we do not ask our state representatives to stand forth and to bring cases against this. I mean, did you get to listen to Mitch McConnell? I'm not really a huge fan of Mitch McConnell, but he did a great job there. Did you get to hear that? And
which specifically, which speech were you talking about?
The speech where he was saying, that he was saying that if we just go with any, this saying, I don't even know where it came from. The House can impeach for anything they believe is an offense. Where did this come from?
Mitch's imagination. I mean, the Constitution.
The House is saying it.
Well, okay, the House is, that's exactly what the House is saying. But as you say, it's not in the Constitution. It has to be treason or bribery or another high crime or misdemeanor of the same
Mitch
ilk.
Mitch is saying if we, I think he said, he didn't use the word give credence to, but he used another word. If we give credence to this, they can tie up the Senate with these cases morning, noon, and night, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 350 whatever days there are in a year, with just throwing these impeachment cases out over any. Actually, Mitch McConnell did mention there were 7. This is the eighth. This is the 8th time they try to impeach Donald Trump since he's been in office in the House.
Yes.
For things like he was mean to the NFL. So you're following me there.
Yes.
And what I'm trying to say is that I'm trying to ask people in the states that voted for this president to reach out to their state representatives to bring a case that will reach the Supreme Court that they are being disenfranchised of their president because of these false and unconstitutional impeachment charges. And that's all I wanted to say, Mike. I adore you, and I adore your program and all your callers, and I just wanted to say, hey, from Massachusetts, we're not all kooky liberals.
Well, I was born in Boston, so, obviously the liberalism didn't rub off on me as well. I don't know if you were listening earlier this week. There was this report that apparently Adam Schiff is now saying they're going to go after Vice President Mike Pence. And a lot of people are out there saying, oh, well, that's going to make Pelosi the president. No, it won't, because as soon as Mike Pence becomes president, if Trump were to be removed, the first thing he would do is appoint a new vice president. I don't think it's going to be Pelosi.
That sounds good. And I'm a little. I want to get back to you. You were born in Boston. You were born in Boston. You're my age group, Mike. When
Yes.
history was still being taught in the schools.
Yes.
When, and so this is where I come from. I'm probably a bit younger than you, and education changed. I witnessed it happen in the public schools, and I know you're from New Hampshire also, but I witnessed the switch over to some kind of practice of Common Core when I was just a little bit. It's only a couple of years between my sister and you and me, and I saw them try to intentionally cause me not to be able to think critically. And I also, when the busing started, I got a chance to go to a Catholic school where they were still teaching from the book, from a history book. And I got to learn about the Constitution, and I'm grateful for that. And I'm hoping that we stand our ground and we do what we have to do as adults and give the kids, not knock them down. I've heard people, giving you a little crap about that. Not knock them down, but educate them. We have to do it because this is the greatest country in the world for one reason, because there's always an alternative to violence in order to change our situation. And the children have been taught incorrectly. And I love you, Mike. I'll talk to you later.
All right, thanks an awful lot. We're going to let you go. The phone lines are open, 800-313-9443. Now, getting on back to the political correct news and transgender, apparently Britain's National Health Service is getting ready to give hormone blockers to a 12-year-old they believe was born in the wrong body. And this is Ashley Lehman, a Kent resident who claims to be a girl born in a boy's body, is one of the youngest British citizens to begin the sex change process. Now, Ashley, whose name has been changed legally by a deed poll, says that she eventually wants a womb transplant so she can bear children when she's older. And the journey is long and still going, but I feel like the sense of victory is there through it all. This is a 12-year-old we're talking about. First of all, the idea of a womb transplant is not going to work, because there's more to bearing a child than just the womb. There are hormones and other chemicals produced by the mother that are sent into the developing fetus at key points in its development. And obviously, this boy who wants to become a girl will be unable to provide those hormones at the appropriate time. So anything that does... Let's stipulate that she actually succeeds in getting a transplanted womb. She's going to be sterile. It's not going to work. Now, apparently, there's this story here, and this is from InfoWars in Europe, that apparently the National Health Service is over-diagnosing sex change treatment for children out of fears of being labeled transphobic. And basically, that's it. 35 psychologists in London have resigned over the last 3 years alone as a result of feeling pressured to greenlight hormone treatment for children that are diagnosed as having gender dysphoria. And one psychologist told Sky News that the developments represented a medical scandal. The psychologist said, "Our fears are that young people are being overdiagnosed and then over-medicated." Yeah, they're being sold on this. We had a story here, I think just a couple of months back, about how the transgenders are literally out there trying to recruit children and say, trust us, you were meant to be a girl or you were meant to be a boy, and, we can help get that fixed here. Another story, this one out of Natural News, a group of experts who used to work in the field recently came forward with a stark warning to the public about how autistic children are basically the LGBTQ mafia's prey of choice because of how easily these little ones can be swayed with the transgender propaganda. As many as 1 in 4 transgenders now registers on the autism spectrum. According to a paper published in the Journal of Autism and Developmental Disorders, this figure is higher than the general population. And the reason is because autistic children are more easily swayed to go trans when pressured by adults to do so. So a study out of the United States involving nearly 300,000 child participants also found that those diagnosed on the autism spectrum are more than 4 times likelier than their non-autistic counterparts to be diagnosed with gender dysphoria. It's a new business. It's just more money for the medical establishment. I think it's child abuse. Now, if somebody grows up to adulthood and of their own free will wants to go through this, fine, let them. But doing this to children who are not really old enough to comprehend exactly what is going on, that to me is child abuse here. Okay, do you remember Jessica Yaniv? This was this transgender woman who made headlines early this year by filing numerous human rights complaints against salons in Canada that refused to wax Yaniv's still male genitalia, and recently complained about being rejected by a gynecology office, is now in hot water with the law in Canada. And it seems that he, she, it is facing 2 counts of possession of a prohibited weapon after brandishing a taser during a live stream video debate with Blair White, a conservative transgender woman. And at one point during the debate, White commented that young girls in restroom stalls would need to carry pepper spray to protect themselves from the likes of Yaniv. And this is a reference to the debate about biological males who identify as female being legally allowed to use girls' and women's restrooms and locker rooms and then prey on the girls in there. And so Yaniv got up, left the debate for a few minutes, and then returned. I don't need to be scared in my own house because I'm going to get blanking attacked. And then she raised the taser, pointed it at the camera, and activated it. And apparently a lot of people complained to the police because there is such a law as felony brandishment, which means you don't have to pull the trigger, you don't actually have to employ the weapon, but if you threaten somebody with it, that is felony brandishment. So Yaniv is definitely in trouble. Now, a little bit of common sense is breaking out up in Washington State. And, you know, it has to do with female athletes. And basically, they're looking at a law that would basically say that biological males, even if they identify as women, may not compete in women's events. And Liberty Nation's Onar Am said, just as you need different weight classes in boxing or wrestling to make the competition fair, you also need a separate category for women so that they have a chance to compete on equal biological terms. And thankfully, at least one politician is aiming to correct this matter. Representative Bill Clifford, the Republican, has filed in the Washington State Legislature House Bill 2201, which would prevent biological males who identify as females from competing in some women's sports. There are exceptions where the competition is fair despite the physical advantages. But for the most part, they're saying, no, you're a biological male, you compete against other men. Story out of Bethesda. Somebody did a survey about Santa Claus. And apparently 30% of the respondents say that Santa Claus should transition to female. How Mrs. Claus is going to feel about that, or just become gender neutral. So, I mean, this is how weird this country has become. You have this comedian who is complained about for saying Merry Christmas, and then you turn around and they're out there saying, well, Santa Claus ought to be gender neutral, or he ought to be female. And by the way, there's a very clear double standard, and we even saw this back in the 1990s at the height of the feminist hysteria. Apparently, there are members of an exclusive women's club who are now outraged because men are being admitted. So, and these are the same, women who insisted, they be allowed access to male clubs. All righty. The United States of America Pageants is being sued by beauty queen contender Anita Green, who is biologically male and transgender, after being denied a chance to compete in the Miss Oregon pageant due to his sex. It's just, Makov is right. These people, they're sick, mentally ill, trying to make it acceptable. Okay, a while back we were talking about how up in Seattle. Oh, all right, got to take a break for commercial. Back with the last segment of our program after these few words. And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show. Let me finish up this story real quick, and then we got a caller on the line here. A while back, we reported on this story about how up in Seattle, they had a homeless conference at which a transgender stripper was hired to twerk on attendees as entertainment. Now, the official has been placed on administrative leave, and justifiably so. And somebody apparently got this stripper on video. Now, it has been a very long time since I've been to a strip club, since before I was married, but I have a vague recollection that when you go to a strip club, it's to see beautiful women in partial or total states of undress. And in this video, this person is ugly. There's no other way to say it. And it's just ridiculous. Anyway, we've got a phone call. Dustin in New Jersey. Aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, Mike, not only are the people sick that believe in this transgenderism, but it tells you where society is headed when the majority of people just stand idly by, just go along with it or don't say anything, because they're taught to be quiet. That's the thing, That's why we're like cattle.
Yep.
And, if Rome could have been saved, it would have, right?
Yes.
The West is unsavable. If you look at what's going on, like in the West, and then you look toward the East with the Chinese or the Russians, yeah, they got problems, but do you see this kind of nonsense going on over there?
Not really.
The average Russian, they don't, they don't even care about what's going on here when it comes to like the impeachment thing. They care about economics and stuff like that. They do care about the sanctions though, because that hurts them. Actually, it hurts them more to know the United States is pulling it, than it hitting them in their wallet, because they're actually doing okay in Russia because they diversified, Yeah. But I just see this whole. It's just insane, man. But it is worse in Britain now, isn't it? Like when it comes to like political correctness, my God, they're finished. You know, they it's funny, they can leave the EU, but neoliberalism is still with them.
Yes.
So really, it doesn't really matter because those elites are still in Britain that believe in this type of, see, that's the thing I still believe in with like Trump versus it's neoliberalism versus neoconism. American, not make America great again, that what we thought. It's like basically to make the empire greater because it's who he puts around him is what I believe that he believes in, like with Israel and stuff, because isn't that sad though? Oh, well, I know you're going to finish the show. I'll continue this Monday.
All right, that'll be just fine here. Have a good weekend. And yeah, we are doing the show live on Monday. We are getting Tuesday and Wednesday off for the Christmas holiday, but we will be live on Monday. All right, so we're done with today's show. TGIF. Stay tuned for John Stadmiller. I'm sure he's got lots of interesting things to share with you. Please spread the word of RBN. Spread the word of whatreallyhappened.com. Don't forget to put a little Christmas something in RBN's Christmas stocking, because we've all been good little girls and boys this year, depending upon who you ask. So we'll be back here on Monday, and Aloha America.